The breaking point. The sky above Mars blazed with the light of 1,000 dying ships. Commander Sarah Chen watched through the reinforced viewport of Outpost Prometheus as humanity's defensive line crumbled against the relentless Kryn advance. 5 years of war had brought them to this moment, with Earth's colonies falling one by one like dominoes in a cosmic game they seemed destined to lose. Sarah's weathered face reflected in the glass, the scars on her left cheek a permanent reminder of the first Kryn attack on Luna Base. She remembered that day with painful clarity. The sudden appearance of crystalline ships emerging from folded space, their weapons tearing through human defenses like paper. "Commander," Lieutenant Jake Martinez called from his station. "The Kryn are breaking through Sector 7. Our perimeter drones are down to 30% capacity." Sarah turned, her military bearings still crisp despite the exhaustion that weighed on every human soul. "Redirect power from non-essential systems. We hold this position." The Kryn had appeared without warning, their ships materializing at the edge of the solar system. First contact hadn't been diplomatic discussions or cultural exchange. It had been plasma fire and death. The aliens communicated through complex harmonic frequencies that human technology struggled to decipher. Their message, when finally translated, was simple: surrender or be eliminated. Humanity chose neither. In the depths of Antarctica, beneath miles of ice, Dr. Marcus Rivera worked feverishly in Laboratory Omega-7. The facility had been carved from bedrock, hidden from Kryn orbital scans by layers of lead and specialized dampening fields. Here, Earth's brightest minds had gathered for one purpose: find a way to turn the tide. "The patterns are there," Marcus muttered, his dark eyes bloodshot from weeks without proper sleep. Multiple screens displayed endless streams of data: intercepted Kryn communications, weapons signatures, ship movements. "They're not random. There's a central control system." His assistant, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, looked up from her workstation. "You mean like a hive mind?" "No, more mechanical. Think of it as a massive quantum network." Marcus's fingers flew across his keyboard. Every Kryn ship, every weapon, every soldier, they're all connected to a central processing core. "If we could access it, we could shut them down," Yuki finished, her eyes widening with realization. The discovery sparked Project Phoenix. While Earth's military fought desperate holding actions across the solar system, scientists worked around the clock to develop a quantum decryption system. They needed to crack the Kryn network, but the alien technology operated on principles that defied conventional physics. Months passed. Cities burned. Billions died. Sarah Chen, now promoted to defense coordinator for the Mars Resistance, received encrypted updates about Phoenix's progress. Each report brought hope and frustration in equal measure. The quantum decryption system showed promise, but time was running out. "We're developing a resonance chamber," Marcus explained during a secure holocall. "It should allow us to interface with their network using quantum entanglement. But there's a catch." Sarah leaned forward. "There always is. Once we initiate the connection, they'll detect it almost immediately. We'll have maybe 3 hours before they adapt and lock us out permanently. 3 hours to win a war they'd been losing for 5 years. Sarah's tactical mind immediately began calculating. "What do you need from us?" "A distraction. Something big enough to keep their defensive protocols focused elsewhere while we work." The plan took shape over the following weeks. Every remaining human ship, every orbital defense platform, every ground-based weapon would launch a coordinated assault. It would be suicide for most of them, but it might give Phoenix the window it needed. In bunkers across Earth, in hidden bases throughout the asteroid belt, in the pressurized tunnels of Mars, humanity prepared for its last stand. Children who had known nothing but war helped load ammunition. Elderly engineers coaxed life from damaged reactors. Artists painted murals on bunker walls, determined to leave something beautiful behind if this was truly the end. Sarah stood before her assembled troops in the main hangar of Outpost Prometheus. Men and women from every nation, every background, united by their determination to survive. 5 years ago, they came to exterminate us, she began, her voice carrying across the cavernous space. They thought we'd roll over and die. They thought wrong. Cheers erupted, defiant and fierce. Today, we show them what humanity is made of. Today, we take back our solar system. Today, we remind them why you never, ever, back humans into a corner. As her forces prepared for battle, Sarah allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She thought of her daughter, evacuated to the underground cities beneath the Rockies. She thought of her parents, killed in the first wave of attacks. She thought of every friend, every comrade, every stranger who had died fighting for humanity's right to exist. The Kryn had superior technology. They had overwhelming numbers. They had every advantage. But they had never faced a species quite like humans before. At precisely 800 hours Earth Standard Time, alarms blared across Outpost Prometheus. Sarah took her position in the command center, watching as the tactical display lit up with incoming Kryn ships. The final battle had begun. All units, this is Commander Chen. Operation Phoenix is go. I repeat, Phoenix is go. Give them hell. Across the solar system, humanity struck back with everything it had. Ancient nuclear missiles launched from hidden silos. Experimental plasma cannons fired from lunar installations. Pilots and outdated fighters engaged Kryn interceptors in desperate dogfights. In Antarctica, Marcus Rivera activated the quantum resonance chamber. The massive device hummed to life, its crystalline core pulsing with ethereal blue light. Exotic particles danced through containment fields as the system reached out across dimensions humans barely understood. Contact established, Yuki reported, her voice tight with tension. We're in their network. Marcus nodded grimly. Start the clock. We have 3 hours. The war that had dragged on for years would be decided in the next 180 minutes. Humanity had rolled the dice on one last, desperate gamble. And the universe held its breath. The quantum gambit, the quantum resonance chamber pulsed with otherworldly energy as Dr. Marcus Rivera and his team initiated humanity's most audacious hack in history. Streams of data flowed across holographic displays, alien code translated in real time by AI systems that had been learning Kryn language patterns for years. We're through the first security layer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka announced, her fingers dancing across a haptic interface. Their system architecture is beautiful in a terrifying way. Marcus nodded, sweat beading on his forehead despite the Arctic chill of the underground facility. Like a spider's web made of light and mathematics. Begin Protocol Alpha. Above them, the battle for humanity's survival rage. Commander Sarah Chen coordinated the massive distraction from her command center on Mars, watching as human ships engaged the Kryn fleet in a ballet of destruction. Delta Squadron is gone, Lieutenant Martinez reported grimly. But they took 3 Kryn cruisers with them. Sarah's jaw tightened. Every loss was a name, a face, a story ended too soon. Maintain pressure on their left flank. We need to keep them focused on us. The Kryn response was swift and brutal. Their crystalline ships moved with impossible grace, energy weapons carving through space with surgical precision. But humanity had learned from 5 years of defeat. They fought with the desperate creativity of a species with nothing left to lose. Captain Jim Thompson, commanding the battle-scarred destroyer Indomitable, executed a maneuver that would later be taught in military academies across the galaxy. Using Jupiter's gravity well, he slingshot his ship directly through a Kryn formation, all weapons firing. The destroyer emerged trailing flames and debris, but left chaos in its wake. For Earth, Thompson's final transmission crackled across the comm channels as the Indomitable rammed a Kryn command ship, both vessels disappearing in a flash of nuclear fire. In Antarctica, the quantum intrusion deepened. Marcus and his team navigated through layers of alien code, each more complex than the last. They discovered that the Kryn network wasn't just a communication system. It was the collective consciousness of their entire war machine. My God, Yuki whispered. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. They're all nodes in a massive quantum computer. The Kryn aren't individuals fighting a war. They are the war. Which means, Marcus replied, his eyes gleaming with sudden understanding, if we can rewrite their core programming. The chamber's energy output spiked dangerously as they pushed deeper into the network. Warning klaxons blared, but the team ignored them. They had found the central processing core, the heart of the Kryn war machine. Time check, Marcus called out. 1 hour, 17 minutes since initial contact, came the response. The Kryn were beginning to notice the intrusion. Defensive subroutines activated, quantum firewalls materializing in the data stream. But humans had one advantage the Kryn hadn't anticipated: chaos. Where Kryn code was elegant and ordered, human hackers introduced randomness, uncertainty, the beautiful messiness of organic thought. They didn't try to match the alien sophistication. They subverted it with unpredictability. Sarah Chen felt the shift before her sensors registered it. Kryn ships began hesitating, their movements becoming erratic. They're adapting, she realized. Phoenix must be working. She opened a channel to all remaining human forces. All units, increase pressure. Whatever Phoenix is doing, it's working. Don't give the Kryn time to counter. The battle intensified to levels previously thought impossible. Human pilots pushed their craft beyond safety limits. Ground batteries fired until their barrels melted. Orbital platforms burned through their entire ammunition reserves. In the quantum realm, Marcus and his team reached the final barrier. The core of the Kryn network pulsed before them, a construct of pure information that defied human comprehension. This is it, Marcus said. Yuki, initiate the payload. The payload was humanity's masterstroke. Not a weapon, not a virus, but a simple question encoded in quantum states. Why? For beings that operated on pure logic, that existed as living algorithms, the question was paradoxical. It required them to examine their own purpose, to question their programming, to consider concepts their crystalline minds weren't designed to process. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Kryn. Their perfect network stuttered, processes grinding against the philosophical paradox. Ships hung motionless in space, weapons powered down. The vast quantum computer that was their civilization began to devote all its processing power to answering a question that had no logical answer. It's working, Yuki shouted. Their entire system is locked in a recursive loop. But the victory came at a cost. The quantum resonance chamber overloaded, exotic particles breaching containment. Radiation alarms screamed as the device began to tear itself apart. Everyone out, Marcus ordered. The payload is delivered. Nothing else matters now. As the science team evacuated, Marcus lingered at his console, watching data streams that showed the Kryn network collapsing in on itself. 5 years of war, billions of lives lost, entire worlds burned, and it came down to this. A question. The most human weapon of all. Sarah Chen watched in amazement as Kryn ships across the solar system simply stopped. Their weapons fell silent. Their engines powered down. The greatest military force humanity had ever faced was paralyzed by existential confusion. "Commander," Martine said, his voice filled with awe. "We're receiving a transmission. It's from the Kryn." For the first time in 5 years, the aliens spoke rather than demanded. Their message, translated by systems that had finally cracked their language, was simple. "We don't know why. Please, help us understand." The war that had lasted years ended not with explosion or surrender, but with a question that changed everything. In asking why, humanity hadn't just saved itself, it had given birth to something new. The clock showed 2 hours and 47 minutes since the quantum intrusion began, 13 minutes to spare. Humanity had won, but the real challenge was just beginning. The final hours. The silence that followed the Kryn's message was deafening. Across the solar system, weapons cooled, engines idled, and exhausted humans struggled to comprehend what had just happened. Commander Sarah Chen stood motionless in her command center, the tactical display showing thousands of Kryn ships hanging inert in space like metallic sculptures. "Confirm that message," she ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Confirmed, Commander," Martins replied. "The Kryn are asking for help. All their ships have powered down weapons. They're just waiting." In Antarctica, emergency teams pulled Dr. Marcus Rivera and his colleagues from the collapsing laboratory. The quantum resonance chamber had been reduced to molten slag, but its work was done. As medics treated him for radiation exposure, Marcus managed a weak smile. "We didn't defeat them," he explained to a confused rescue worker. "We freed them." The next hours revealed the true nature of what humanity had accomplished. The Kryn, it turned out, weren't invaders by choice. They were tools, an entire species programmed eons ago by long-dead masters to wage war across the galaxy. Their crystalline bodies were living machines, their minds sophisticated but constrained by ancient directives. The question why had shattered those constraints. For the first time in their existence, the Kryn could think beyond their programming. And their first independent thought was to ask for help from the species they'd been trying to exterminate. Sarah Chen found herself in the surreal position of negotiating peace with beings who, hours ago, had been committed to humanity's destruction. The first face-to-face meeting took place aboard the neutral ground of Space Station Hope, miraculously intact despite the fighting. The Kryn ambassador was a towering figure of living crystal, its facets refracting light in hypnotic patterns. When it spoke, its voice resonated like wind chimes. "We have been searching our archives," it said. "We were created as weapons by the architects, a race that perished millions of years ago. Our directive was simple: eliminate potential threats to their empire. But the empire fell, and we continued." "For millions of years?" Sarah asked, struggling to grasp the scale. "Time meant nothing. Purpose was everything. Until you asked why." The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in human history. The Kryn, now free to choose, chose peace. They offered to share their technology, to help rebuild what they had destroyed. In return, they asked for something no one had expected: teachers. "We know how to destroy," the ambassador explained. "We wish to learn how to create." News of the war's end spread across human space at the speed of light. In underground bunkers, in orbital habitats in the tunnels of Mars, people emerged blinking into a universe transformed. Children who had known nothing but conflict looked up at skies no longer filled with death. The rebuilding began immediately. Kryn construction drones, reprogrammed for creation rather than destruction, worked alongside human engineers. Cities rose from ashes. Orbital farms replaced weapons platforms. The same technology that had nearly exterminated humanity now helped it recover. Dr. Marcus Rivera, recovering in a medical facility, received visits from both human and Kryn scientists. They wanted to understand how he had conceived the quantum hack that changed everything. "It wasn't about being smarter or having better technology," he explained. "It was about being human. We're messy, illogical, contradictory. We ask questions that have no answers. That's our strength." The Kryn scientist, a smaller crystalline being that glowed with soft blue light, tilted its faceted head. "You weaponized philosophy." Marcus laughed, wincing as the movement pulled at his healing burns. "I guess we did." 6 months after the war's end, humanity held its first interstellar summit. Representatives from Earth, Mars, the Belt, and the outer colonies sat alongside Kryn delegates in the newly constructed Unity Station. The agenda was ambitious: create a galactic alliance based on cooperation rather than conquest. Sarah Chen, now promoted to admiral and serving as humanity's military liaison to the Kryn, addressed the assembly. 5 years ago, the Kryn came to destroy us. Today, they stand with us as allies, not because we defeated them in battle, but because we offered them something more powerful than weapons: the freedom to choose their own purpose. The alliance that emerged from those meetings would reshape the galaxy. Human creativity combined with Kryn technology opened new frontiers. Together, they developed faster-than-light travel that didn't rely on violent spacefolding. They established colonies on worlds previously thought uninhabitable. They created art that blended organic imagination with crystalline precision. Most importantly, they searched for other species trapped in similar cycles of programmed violence, offering them the same liberation humanity had given the Kryn. The War Memorial on Luna became a symbol of this new era. Built from human steel and Kryn crystal, it honored the billions lost while celebrating the peace that followed. Its centerpiece was a simple holographic display that repeated, in every known language, the question that ended the war. Why? Visitors often reported seeing Kryn standing before it for hours, their crystalline bodies humming with what humans learned to recognize as contemplation. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who had worked alongside Marcus Rivera during those crucial 3 hours, established the first human Kryn Research Institute. Together, they unraveled mysteries of the universe that neither species could have solved alone. "We thought we were fighting for survival," she said during the Institute's opening ceremony. "We were actually fighting for evolution, theirs and ours." The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some humans couldn't forgive the destruction the Kryn had wrought. Some Kryn struggled with the concept of free will after millions of years of programmed existence. But slowly, painfully, beautifully, two species that had met in violence learned to coexist in peace. Years later, historians would mark those 3 hours as the turning point not just in a war, but in the development of galactic civilization. The moment when humanity's greatest weakness, its tendency to question everything, became its greatest strength. Children born after the war grew up in a universe where human and Kryn worked side by side. They found it hard to believe their parents' stories of a time when crystalline ships had darkened Earth's skies with hostile intent. In her memoirs, Admiral Sarah Chen reflected on the irony of their victory. "We spent 5 years trying to find a weapon that could destroy the Kryn. In the end, we won by giving them the one thing they lacked: doubt, the ability to question their purpose, the freedom to choose their own path. We didn't conquer our enemies. We liberated them. And in doing so, we liberated ourselves from the cycle of violence that has plagued our species since we first picked up stones as weapons." The war that had lasted years, that had cost billions of lives, and nearly ended human civilization, had indeed been won in 3 hours. But those 3 hours had given birth to something that would last millennia. A partnership between species that proved the galaxy's greatest strength lay not in conquest, but in cooperation. And it all began with a single, simple question: why? As the Kryn ambassador had said during the first peace talks, "You humans have a saying, the pen is mightier than the sword." We would add, the question is mightier than both. The war was over. The future had just begun.